Welcome, everybody, to the Get Reelisms podcast. Today, it is just me, one of your co-hosts, Christine Chen. Unfortunately, my other co-host, Adam Chase Rainey, who's the fun one, is not fun anymore because he's sitting in bed on lots of NyQuil. So, poor thing, it'll just be me, but we have a special guest. So, our special guest, let's introduce yourselves.
Hi. Hi. It's nice to see you. I'm Cynthia Wade. I'm a filmmaker primarily of documentaries, but I also do some fiction and commercial work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Cynthia. You've probably done a million of these. I'm particularly excited because I'm always happy to talk with other female filmmakers, especially one. I actually started in documentary films before I got into narratives. So it's fun to talk to somebody who started in documentaries and has had a lot of success in documentary filmmaking. So I guess I'll start with the very basics, Cynthia. So how did you get started? When did you start making films? When was the first time you picked up a camera? All that jazz.
So I was a theater kid in high school, middle school, high school, college. I was a theater major in college.
Okay.
And I had this really sort of wake up call. I went to my junior year of college. I went to this really esteemed theater program. It was like 30 other students and me, really intense, mostly like, critical training, and Shakespearean directors and actors came in and we learned fencing. I mean, you name it. It was very like, it was very serious and also amazing. It was an amazing program. It was a fantastic program. However, a B minus C plus actor from sitcoms from Los Angeles flew in. It was this theater school was on the East Coast, and he sat down and he was like, "Listen, I'm gonna cut to the chase." And there were, we were just young students, co-ed group. Okay. He said, "For the girls of the room, I'm going to tell you what's going to get you the part." And so we all kind of leaned in, and he looked around and he was like, "You need something called fuckability. Oh. You need to walk into the audition and the director needs to think, I want to fuck her. And the producer has to think, I want to fuck her. And the playwright needs to think, I want to fuck her. And the casting director, if he is there, he needs to think, I want to fuck her. And if you don't have that, and you don't have all 3, 4 of them thinking that, you're never going to get the part." And I was 20 years old, and I was like, oh my God. Like, it was actually earth-shattering for me. What's really odd about it is that none of my theater classmates remembered this at all. Oh. And to me, it was like the seminal moment that actually, like, my whole universe shifted. And I was like, oh, well, if that's what this, I don't want to do this. If that's what this is, I'm out.
Yeah.
So I was doing directing there, but very shortly thereafter, when I went back to college, I picked up a camera. I applied to be a scholar, which meant that you could have you could figure out something your senior year, your last year of college, to do. And I decided to make a documentary. Self-taught. There was no film department, but it was the beginning of the path. And then worked in homeless shelters, believe it or not, for 6 years full time in my 20s. And in the midst of that, got a fellowship to go to the Stanford documentary program. At that time, it was a program where it was a year in residence, and then they kicked you out and you did your thesis, and then you came back and got a master's. Oh, wow. So I took basically a year leave, absence, went out to California, learned. It was a technical training school, really became a cinematographer first. Like, that's what I was. And we were trained in film. Then went back to the homeless shelters, had so much debt from Stanford because that was on me. Yeah. And it took 11 years to pay back those loans. I worked in homeless shelters for 6 of them full time. And then on the side, I started shooting for other people, independent projects. Then it became PBS. Then one of the PBS things won a bunch of awards. Then, I started to do A&E biography. I started to do MTV True Life because it was back in the day, History Channel, biography, all of those things. And then eventually I made a personal documentary that HBO picked up. And that was my first thing as a director. I made a personal documentary. And then shortly thereafter, I sold something to HBO as my own, directing, shooting. And then eventually I opened up a boutique company in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
I had 3 people on staff. And so that was interesting to just like, there was no trust fund sustaining this. And that's a dirty secret in this industry, as you know, I think particularly in documentary, but maybe
Yeah.
across. But we did it. We were pulling rabbits out of hats. We did that for years and years. And, eventually I stopped shooting and I just started directing. And then in about probably 2010, certainly by, between 2010 and 2013, I started directing commercials, and it started as real people commercials. Then I joined the DGA. Then I was sort of doing more work for hire. And so in the last year, as an example, I directed 3 Apple episodes of an Apple series. I was able to take a labor of love film that I co-directed with a good friend of mine and sell it to Disney Plus, a one-off doc. And then I'm just finishing now. The trailer drops tomorrow morning, a 4-part series on Netflix, which I directed, I was showran, and I was an executive producer. So it's been a really long trajectory. It's not an easy one if you don't know anybody and you don't come from, family money, which I was just like, I was just a scrappy thing.
Yeah. So originally before
I do want to say this. Sorry, I did want to say this. There's something about working in nonprofit and working in those homeless shelters that is very akin to documentary filmmaking.
Ooh.
Because if you work in a homeless shelter, which I did for 6 years, I did 2 in the Bronx, 1 in East New York, Brooklyn. I mean, it was all around different locations in New York City. You're given a very small budget or a no budget, and you have to create magic from nothing. You have to create something from nothing. And that, I was so scrappy. Like, I figured out all kinds of ways to get things for the kids there, the families there, how we would get tickets to things, how we would take trips, how we would I wrote grants. But that kind of scrappy, like, I'm going to pull a rabbit out of nowhere, out of a hat, and something, I'm going to create something meaningful out of nothing. Those skills were 100% translatable to documentary film, and still are.
Yeah. Well, to filmmaking in general, I feel like, especially if you're a woman. So when the actor, it was an actor or actress that came and spoke.
Actor. Okay. Oh, actor. Yes.
When the actor came and shattered all your dreams, at that point, prior to that, you were on the track of becoming a theater actress. Is that what the...
Yeah, maybe director. I was acting, and I was at the time, there were some strong things about me as an actor. I think I was probably a stronger director. But yeah, probably until that moment, I thought, well, maybe I'll move to New York and I'll start to go to auditions to like plays.
Yeah.
He actually saved me years of heartache, even though it was pretty brutal to hear in the moment. I was able to pivot when I was 20 before I even got out of college. And then that way, that was a gift. It's just like, it was just, I don't know. It was that era where you had no agency as certainly as a young woman, and you had there was nothing. There's no Me Too. There was nothing. So it was like, if dude said it, dude was right. And if dude said to you, you're not fuckable, then you weren't. And anyway, who wants to be? Right. So it's just like, it just was the era. And I would argue to some extent still is, because I think, there are gestures that have been made, but there's still vast inequality, as you know.
I agree. Yeah, I say that a lot, that, it's not all bad in terms of there is change being made, but this change is slow and it's up and down. Sometimes you'll see, and sadly, a lot of changes is started because of a fad of some sort. Oh, it's cool to recycle now. You see lots of change, and then people get bored and then plateaus, right? Me Too. There was a big, movement, and now I think people are gone distracted with other things, life. So,
well, a lot of it is gesture, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like tangible change.
Yes.
We could talk about that, but a lot of it is just gesture. It's like bumper sticker gesture, which I guess is a first step, but yeah. There's a lot of work to be done still.
Do you remember what camera you picked up the first time you picked up a camera? I was curious.
Yeah, it was a video. I mean, it was video.
Was it a
tape.
mini DV?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was my first camera was mini DV as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what do you remember? What was the software that was it Final Cut?
No,
Do you
it was
remember anything?
Media 100.
Oh my God.
It predated. It predated
What is Media
Media 100.
100?
It was the challenge. You know what it was? It was like the BlackBerry to Apple.
Oh,
It was like the BlackBerry to Apple the way, it was like Avid came out and Media 100 came out. And Media 100 was cheaper.
yeah.
But it was enormously expensive. I mean, at the time,
Yeah.
an Avid software was $100,000, and
Yeah.
Media 100 sort of getup was like $40,000. Like it wasn't like it is today at all.
Yeah.
So there was an enormous barrier. So Media 100 was my thing, was my jam until, yeah.
Until it became obsolete.
Until it became obsolete, and I guess until it was like Final Cut. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
Media 100.
So I came in when Final Cut was what it was.
Okay.
So, much like you, it was never knew anything about films, picked up a camera, and it happened to be a documentary film class. But mine wasn't because I had any aspirations to be in the film industry at this point. It was because it was a requirement to do a art credit for undergrad. And so
where was it?
Yeah.
Where was this documentary class?
So mine was at Rice University in Texas.
Texas. Wow.
Yeah. So they didn't even have, I think they had a really tiny cinema like major there, but I didn't know. I just did a blanket visual arts basically. Because I knew that I was always interested in visual arts. And so yeah, but it was like that. Picked up a camera, and I think what I liked about I realized something was there because I would spend so much time in the editing room. I was fascinated with editing. I don't know about you, but I just feel like everything that I credit to my career has been because I have the ability to do post. I'm good at editing and I love editing. How about you?
So I'm the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. I would call myself a hunter-gatherer, which what I love more than anything, and it's why I love documentary film in particular, is you're dispatching me into promise, but nothing has actually been realized, and it's chaos. It's just chaos of life, whatever it is. And often in documentary, you might be walking into a situation where there are a lot of ethical landmines, where you're navigating getting access to stories or gaining trust with folks who are in some of the most challenged moments of their lives. Certainly I've, lived with people as they were dying and made films, or people where they've gotten life altering news, or like going through a life altering event.
Yeah.
And that navigating that tightrope and thinking about it, like, how do I corral these disparate, chaotic pieces into a story, into a narrative? How do I interpret this into footage that can be crafted into something? How do I sustain? How do I keep the access? How do we gain trust? And, it has to be somewhat of a collaboration. There needs to be some partial ownership with the people that you're working with, because they need to believe in it too.
Yeah.
And then the chaos of, not always, but often, at least in documentary, by the time you get to editing, there's at least some budget. When you're shooting, you're like rolling out a single bag on a couch, right? Or whatever. And sometimes something's happening and the window's closing so quickly, you can't fundraise. You just have to pick up a camera and go.
Just do it.
And and it's that chaos that I really love to corral and navigate. I think, honestly, my sister is a New York Times bestselling author. Yeah. She does it and she's done both fiction and nonfiction. She does it with words. I think I do it with pictures, but we grew up in a somewhat chaotic, very messy, physically and emotionally household. And I think it's been a survival skill to figure out how to organize the chaos in a way that, like, I can make sense of it, and therefore the world can make sense of it. So I am very, very happy and very comfortable being out there as the hunter-gatherer, just in terms of like getting footage and trying to figure out how to, with a small budget or limited shoot days, how do you maximize those shoot days? In the edit process, particularly between having nothing to a first bad rough cut or maybe even a second bad rough cut,
Yeah.
It is like torture. For me, it is like torture. To sit in a room is torture. And I loathe and hate, and I'm
Oh,
not that person. So I have to trust and,
the
work
editor.
with really good editors.
Yeah.
Once we get to fine cut, I actually shine. I'm really good at it because I was a trained musician. So then
Hmm.
working with composers and sound mixes and stuff. But oh my God, you want to torture me? Put me in a room with a lot of footage and tell me I have to come up with a rough cut.
Oh no. I'm the opposite. I think because to me, editing is like writing. Um, I've learned how to be a better writer because I see what I shot and then I make sense. Like it's also making sense of it, but just it's almost like I'm writing, and I think I've seen it more with narrative. Um, I've never really officially done a screenwriting training course of any sort. So, and I'm such a tactile person that being
Mhm.
able to see what I wrote translated visually and then going into the edit room and seeing whether it works is kind of like an experiment. So
Mhm.
I'm like, should have written this better, don't need this giant monologue because that didn't work, type thing. And that's how it's improved my writing and everything. And I think that's why I like, and there's also a sense of control when I'm in the edit room. So that's interesting. What you were describing skill wise, I'm like, hey, Cynthia, if you need a backup plan, you should be an AD.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I know that you have really strong AD skills because you really think about maximizing shoot days and planning and time of day and light and like, how can I squeeze the most out of it? And if I'm going to stick
Yeah.
to a 12-hour day, like all of those things, like you shoot feature films in really remarkably, relatively short amounts of time. And it's because you're really, really good at the planning of it. And I think that people starting out or emerging in film think that somehow it's like the auteur that like walks,
Right.
you're going to be inspired and we'll just see what happens. But so much of it is planning and so much of it is discipline. I think a lot of
Yes.
creativity is discipline.
Yes, I agree. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think I don't know if it's a societal, just a romanticized view of what creating means.
Mm-hmm.
And it is affected future creatives because they think that if I'm supposed to be creative, the only way to do it is I'm sitting by myself and I'm like off in my head. And there is that process, of course. But I do agree. I think without execution, which is all about discipline,
Yes.
you're not going to be able to have a final product whatsoever.
Yes.
And so, yeah, no, I agree. I think art is about discipline. It's about being able to sacrifice other things for your art in terms of like, hey, I'm going to sit here and practice over and over and over again. I've done this thing again. Let's do it again and getting better at something. I often when I'm ADing, I meet a lot of PAs that this is their for a lot. Most of them, especially here in LA, everybody seems to have I'm a this, but I'm actually this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So the couple things. One is I want to touch on when people say to you, well, you just got lucky.
Mm,
Because that's a pet peeve of mine. That's a real pet peeve. So let's put that aside for a second. But
yes.
the other thing is um on my sets, on my commercial sets, on my doc sets, PAs have to take at least one PA class on Zoom
Mhm.
with my producer and my AP, sometimes more than one. Um, I don't care if you are a director or a screenwriter. In this room, on this set, you are a PA. The
Yes.
same way that, like, sometimes I need to be quiet. And, like if I'm in a situation where I'm working with execs, I don't need to, like, my job is to support, your job is to support the whole, right? And what I always tell the PAs is you have to almost be like a lifeguard. First of all, you need to know your place. You need to know that you have two ears and one mouth. So you need to be listening at least twice as much as you're talking, maybe a lot more, right? Um, it's not about you expressing that you're really a director, but you only happen to be here because that's not what it is. If you commit to it, commit to it.
Right.
Whatever that job is, commit to it. And read the room and be almost like a lifeguard. where what you're thinking all the time, you're scanning the room, you're anticipating what needs may be, and you're sort of anticipating what might happen next. But you need to be asking yourself, what does the scene need? And I'm not talking about the scene we're filming. I'm talking about, like, you know,
In this moment,
there's sweat that's pouring off the DP because it's 90 degrees and really humid, and we're in South Miami in July.
Right.
And you've got a backpack full of water because you want to be on the ready for the DP, but the sound person actually prefers seltzer. So you also have seltzer. Like, it's all of those small things to help help the whole production happen. Yeah. And as a director, that's true for me as well. Like, it's what the scene needs. It's what the scene needs.
Yeah. It's anticipating needs.
Yeah, it's anticipating all the needs. The lucky part, I just find, I don't know if you find this too. Well, we can say a couple things. As female directors, it's a well-known fact that anytime we sort of land anything on IMDb, it's either bros in the armchairs or bots will immediately score, if they see a female name, they'll immediately score a film 1 star without having seen it. And you've had this experience because you've had 1 star before it was even released.
It wasn't, that's why I knew. I was like, there's no way, because I literally have not released this film anywhere. How is it possible that I have 1 star right now? Like, nobody's seen it.
Yeah, so that's a thing. That's sort of, I don't know, whatever the hell that is. That's a thing.
I don't know.
But the other thing is just like the armchair. It's so easy from the outside to critique in a way where you don't even know what it's like from the inside. And from the inside, you're taking lots of risks, right? You're taking a lot of risk, and you're putting yourself out there. You're putting the inside of yourself out there for the world to see. And the world is mostly in their pajamas on a laptop being snarky, but they couldn't actually do what you do.
Right.
So that's irritating. And the luck is such a way of undermining the preparation. Like, you down to the millisecond, you figure out your, everything. You write the script, you visualize it, all of it, like the production design, the location scouting, all of it. Like, you figure out how to maximize those 12 hours each day of your shoots. That's not luck. Sorry, but that's not luck. That is enormous preparation. And again, the discipline.
Yeah. And people forget about that. I think it's easy just to see the final product and that's it. They don't realize. When you bring a non-film person to a film set, that's when people get mind blown.
They're like, I had no idea. Like, even like a simple commercial that I might do in somebody's home where it's real people.
Yeah.
They're shocked. And even if I'm like, listen, we're going to have and we, there's Video Village, and then we're bringing in G&E and we're lighting something, and maybe it's even just pretty simple and low budget. Sure. Their mind is blown. Yeah.
They're always blown. Always. I don't think I've had a single non-film person come and be like, this is how I expected. No, it's always like, oh my God, how many people are coming into this house? How many people, why are there this many trucks and stuff like that? Like, they're mind blown. And, and I often tell people who are trying to get into it, like, we are glorified movers. We move equipment from one side to the other side, from one side to the other side. It's not glamorous whatsoever. Yet,
it's funny that you say that, because when I was a cinematographer, I would often say to people, I feel like I work for a moving company.
Yeah.
Like, all things and move it all day. Like, that's what it is you just feel like you're part of a moving company. It's funny that you said that, because that's often how I would describe it. Like, and you're broken. Like, you have a lot of physical ailments over the course of years, your shoulder, your neck, your back, just because it's like physically so grueling.
Yeah. And you don't realize it until did a stupid thing. And, one time I tried to stay in shape and I lifted too much and then like threw out my back and had to cancel a few shoots because you physically can't do the job. That's how physically grueling it is. And then everybody who's come off of their first day on set, second day, are always like, hey, I feel like I just got hit by a train. It's true. Yeah. Because you are constantly in movement. I'm shooting a side passion project documentary wise. And my producer, she's she's more, she's dabbing, she's jumping, dipping her toe into filmmaking. She's not a filmmaker whatsoever. She's somebody who's been interested in storytelling, made her fortune through tech and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just, I go and shoot, and we're shooting, and it's 5 hours in. She's like, I'm tired, and I'm like,
I know.
we're just starting, Marsha.
Yeah, it's like that's like a third of a day, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're just starting. What do you mean you're tired? And she's like, no, I really can't go. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. And so I'm having to come to terms of like, okay, well, we're gonna move at a pace because she's my financier and everything too. So I'm like, we're just gonna move at your pace, but it's like the slowest pace I've ever felt, because it's just they're just non-film people are not used to that kind of grueling work pace. And comment, she's always like, you are standing the whole day. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, my stand hours, I mean, it could be 20 hours on those shoot days. Like I'm like, I better get some sleep because it starts tomorrow at 4 a.m. I mean, there are a couple things I think that people don't understand. One is that you're creating, even with doc work, it's all around the light, right? Yes. It's all around the light. So you want to get up at dark, and you want to make sure that your crew is fed, and you want to be there to capture that beautiful early morning light. And then you may move indoors in the middle of the day. That's what I tell students when I teach, right? Because it's that ugly flat overhead light where there's this harsh shadows. And then you're going to move back outside. And of course, in the summertime, those are very long days. In the wintertime, it's a different kind of challenge because you have to figure out, like, are you lighting night? Are you lighting nighttime, but making it look like it's day? And, filling windows with HMIs or whatever, so it looks like daylight coming through the windows. Like, it's pretty complicated, and the light changes very rapidly. And so building your shoot days around light, I don't think that people quite understand that when they start in film. There was something else that I was going to say, touching on what you were saying in terms of just shoot days and sort of the stamina of it. Oh, one thing I do want to say is I do think that there is a difference, and it's good to know who you are. It's a little bit like living in LA. Are you a mountain person or a beach person, right? Like people are like, do you live on the west side near the beach, or do you live like on the east side in the mountains, right? Like despite the fact that tomorrow a trailer is coming out for my Merpeople series for Netflix, and then I've spent the last year plus filming mermaids, I'm really a land person. I'm really a mountain person. I think in that way, there are production people and there are post people. Yes. The production people are the hunter-gatherers, where there's a Maslow hierarchy of needs. So you may not pee for 6 hours, right? Like you're supposed to take a break every 5 hours, maybe, but you, like, in terms of having to pee, in terms of carrying really heavy things, in terms of knowing exactly what's going to be for lunch and when, and you can call, and people know now, if you're on a union shoot, like you can be like, we're going to call some grace so we can shoot for another 15 minutes or, 30 minutes, and then we'll have lunch, but then there's penalties. Like, there's a whole thing with unions. But you're in it where you're staying at a Holiday Inn, you're away from your family, you're dealing with COVID exposure on the planes and in the field, you're doing all those COVID tests, you're not getting a lot of sleep, you're eating crappy food because you happen to be in Indiana somewhere, and like a salad consists of bad iceberg lettuce, like whatever,
a shit ton of salad dressing.
Right. Yeah. Whereas production, so that's production people. And it's a little bit like you're in a war, like, which I like. It's like you're part of an army, and but post, it's a different sensibility. They tend to be more introverted, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not scientific, but like being, like you said, like being in the room with the footage and really figuring out how to, construct the story and breathe the story to light and experiment and all of those things. And really, like, you get these incredibly deep connected relationships with the people on your screen, which is weird because they don't know who you are at all. Right. So you're sort of a lurker, but you might be in there for 6 months, 8 months, a year, more, just working on this thing. But you do know. And sometimes I will say, I love post people, but sometimes I'm like, dudes, you have no idea what it's like for the production. Like, my heart's always with the production, because they'll say, they'll talk about, it is really hard, but dude, you can stop and pee anytime you want, and you literally can stop and have lunch anytime you want, and you get to sleep in your own bed.
Yeah.
So you're winning. You're winning. So there really is a difference. I feel like the way they're mountain and beach, I feel like
Yeah.
there's really difference between production and post in terms of the temperament. And if you're starting out in film, I think it's really good to figure out what temperament, what do you best fit in terms of those, those broad categories.
Personalities. Well, I think that's definitely why when you're in production, I can pretty much, you can look at somebody and stereotypically be like, oh, that person's probably art, or that person's G&E, or that's like if they were to stand right next to each other without doing anything, you could pinpoint, because you do have a personality for each of the different departments. And I hate to be like, oh, it's all stereotypical, but the thing is, there are just certain personalities that just fit certain departments better than other departments. It's exactly what you're speaking towards in terms of your fit type thing. So
yes, although yes. I've been on in the last, well, it's been a while, but probably there was a 2-year period, 3-year period. I mean, it will happen again. It's just because the pandemic upended so much, where I've been on my own commercial set. This has happened more than I want to say, where I'll be and I'll talk to my AD, right? There's a whole hierarchy, as you know. Some people know, some people don't, where like I'm not necessarily talking directly to G&E, right, grip and electric. I might talk to my DP directly, my lead DP, or I might talk to my AD, my assistant director, who will then communicate to the crew, right? Else. So, and it's like, if there's a prop, I'm not picking the prop up. Like this is important, I think, for people starting out to know, like, right, that's their job. You don't touch it, you communicate, and there's a hierarchy. But I've 100,000% been on sets several times, my own sets, their call sheets. My name is the director on the call sheet, right? And I'm like in a different city, whatever we've come in. So some of it is my people, some of it is source.
Yeah.
And I will say to the AD, I would actually really love if we can move this in a little bit, like let's angle this a little bit, because I'd love for the light to fall this way. And lo and behold, it might be the head grip guy. It's always a guy. It might be one of the lighting techs. Maybe it's the prop guy. They will say to me, and you are? Ooh. Like, happens more than you think. And I realize the only retort for that really is the person who can fire you. Goodbye. You can leave now. Like I'm at that point where I feel like I'm going to say that. And I'm always like, director. And at one point, some guy was like, oh. And then he misremembered my name as Christine, actually. And he came up to me and he was like, Christine, I'm so sorry. And I blew it. And I was like, read the call sheet. My name is not Christine. Read the like, there's no excuse. But the assumption is I probably am not I'm not important, or who the hell am I because I'm female.
Yeah.
I have both an Academy card and a DGA card because I'm a member of the Academy and the DGA. My husband is 6'2", 6'2" white guy. When we go to those events, I can't even tell you. I'm like, and I'm now every time I'm like, watch this, Matt, watch this, let's clock this, watch this. We walk up to the desk and they immediately, their eyes get big, like, hi, sir. Like, and he steps aside and I hand my card over because the assumption is I must be the plus one. I must be the plus one.
All the time.
So that,
oh my gosh,
that happens. And the other thing, and I don't know if you get this, is if people are even paying attention to what you do, they say to me all the time, I wonder if they say this to you, you're a producer? I'm like, no, director. Like all of the time. I've gotten, are you a casting person?
I get makeup all the time. Makeup.
Do you really? Makeup?
Yeah, I get, or actress. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. But I'm like, do I really look right now? No, I get those a lot.
I get producer a lot. And I know a lot of other women who do, like directors. And I say, no, director. And there's always this kind of thing like, well, you think you are. Like, there's always this, I don't know, this, like, no, actually, you can look it up. I really am a director.
Yeah. There's always this like, that's cute. Yeah. You think you are type mentality.
Yeah. It's nice that you're saying that about yourself. Nice.
I totally have that. One of my producers from earlier projects, also a 6'2" male, during festivals, film festivals, any sort of promotional gathering, everybody would immediately ask him, so tell us about like how the story came about, like all the directing questions and stuff like that. He'd just be like, we let it go because we found it funny after a while. and then we would see how much foot and mouth we could get the other person to feel, and then they'd be like, actually, and I just start answering to
Yeah.
after that. But yeah, all the time, all the time.
Which is actually critical for, as female directors, I think, to make sure that you really are hiring an assistant director and a lead DP. That, because I find this on commercials too, is that the video village sometimes, you know, the clients and the agency, they will circumvent and try to go to one of my like, because they're still want to be in film, but they're in advertising, so they're on the commercial set, so they'll try to go to my DP. Like, it's usually a guy who will go to the DP because he wants to bro out with my DP, who, you know, not always, but often is a guy. And, you know, the people that, you know, we're a very closely knit family. So my DPs and my ADs also know, well, let's bring in Cynthia. Well, let's talk to Cynthia. Well, Cynthia's the director. Like, it's, I have a question for you. Have you ever considered changing your name to something that is not female identified?
I thought about that. You know what? I thought about it for when I submit to things. So, not necessarily, I think, in the credits and stuff like that, but like if I'm submitting for a grant or I'm submitting and it's like blind anyway, even if it's just my initials, you know, CW Chen or something like that, something that's just not obvious. I thought about that for sure, just because I don't know. I often wonder, am I not getting something because it's because you're female or whatever. Yeah. I think about that all the time. For sure. I haven't done it. It'd be interesting. Because I've heard it happen in a lot of industries. My friend right now in the startup world, she's in tech. She can't seem to get funding for her business idea. And one of her partners is like, look, if just say it and I will help you pitch it, because he's a male. He's like, I guarantee you I will get that funding for you. And so and it's pride or whatever, but she's like, no, like it needs to be like known that a woman can do that as a woman type thing, you know? So I don't know. I think about it a lot. I'm wondering just whether just simply hiding my name, like as a CW Chen or something, would make it that way. Have you had that way? Have you had to do
well, I have an AD, a commercial AD, who calls me Suede, just because I'm C Wade. So she's like, Suede. And part of me is like, it's, and like my film family, they might say CW because my initials are CW. So
That's
CW. So they'll say that. But, you know, there are moments when I'm like, I just know male, I actually know a couple of the male screenwriters where their names are William something, but they've renamed themselves Billy because that's younger, right? For them, what they're doing is they just want to appear sort of younger. And so I've thought, like, this one AD, she's always like, sweet, how are you? I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's just what I should be named on set, because it's not as like earnest as, you know, or serious as Cynthia, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I think about that sometimes. I think your friend, actually, even if she's pitching herself, personally, what I think she should do is have a fake male assistant on a separate, like whatever her domain is, like make it, you know,
right, and all emails go through him per se, or whatever.
Correct, regardless of who's answering it. That's what I think she should do that. That's my free advice to her.
PA Bootcamp says they like Suede, since it sounds kind of cool for both male or female. So
maybe I'll just like maybe people will roll their eyes, and certainly, but maybe I'll do it anyway.
But
because it makes it, then that becomes a little bit of your brand, right?
It's fun. No, it's definitely something else I have thought about and wrestled with. I mean, like, I run a radio walkie-talkie rental company, and whenever there's an issue with, because I was tired of productions that would think that giving us like toy walkies was the same, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been on some small indie sets, and they're like, oh, we bought these, and like, I'm like, dude, like, these don't work. And so I started a walkie-talkie business so I can be like, no, we're coming with these. Yeah, stop making my life harder than it already is. And when I have to deal with clients, mainly male, who are like questioning things about the rental, I just sick my other partner on them because he's male and they won't question him whatsoever.
Right.
If I'm like, hey, there are three surveillances missing, I'll get like this whole pushback about all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When he does it, they're like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a clear, so no, I think that's a great idea to have a um gender neutral or just name
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
appears. And
But let's talk about the ways in which being a female filmmaker is a superpower. Because I actually think they're way because there are moments, not always, but there are moments that you are so under estimated.
Mm.
Sometimes it can be stealth. Sometimes you can like get
You
in
could get
there
into things, right? Yep.
and there is a real, I think there's also the flip side of it is there's power in it because you are, if you're underestimated, then you're less of a threat, then you can sort of maybe work
Get
your way
in,
into a
get in
location
covertly.
or yeah, exactly,
Yeah, no,
like or
totally.
just
I use
yeah.
it when I'm in a location where I know that we didn't get permission for, and I pull the whole like, I'm sorry, it's stupid and I didn't know any better. You know,
Mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm,
card a lot,
mm-hmm,
so much.
mm-hmm,
It also helps if you look like you should in high school. That helps too. So you're like, oh, I'm a student. Yeah, that helps. Uh totally. I use it on more on the producing end than anything. It doesn't really help me out as an AD, but I what I do like that I think that female ADs have is compassion. I think there is we are just, a lot of us are more in tune to our empathy. And
mm-hmm,
so sometimes too much, but I think it's good because uh, we tend to treat people like people. And so I think
mm-hmm,
that's the superpower when it comes to female ADs. But for producing, I've definitely pulled that card quite a bit because people feel, I guess they just, oh, I don't want to, there's a softer spot or like a
mm-hmm,
protection. I don't know what you call it, but they tend to let things slide a bit more when
mm-hmm,
it comes to that. I don't know. How
mm-hmm.
about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I co-directed a film in Indonesia for 5 years. We had no I did it with somebody who lived in Indonesia for a long time and was fluent in Bahasa, the local language there. It was a very dangerous film, very, very dangerous film to make. We were uncovering this political, environmental story of an oil drill hit an underground pocket of mud, which
Mm.
started exploding. Um, and has continued to explode. It's been 15 years at least at this point. Every moment of every day, massive explosions, like massive, like yellow, beyond Yellowstone
Oh my
explosions.
gosh.
And
Okay.
it swallowed 17 villages under 60 feet of mud, all toxic, and displaced 60,000 people. And it was covered up. Nobody knew about it, particularly in the West. Nobody knew about it. And I thought to myself, and it was the kind of thing that it was dangerous. Most of the Indonesian crew that we had went by anonymous in the credits.
Yeah.
So it was one of these things where it had to be sort of carefully done. And you always have to ask in documentary, like, why am I the right person to tell this story? So you always have to ask, why this story? Why now? Why is
Yeah.
now the right time to tell it? And why me? And the
Right.
why me is really important, right? Because not everybody should be telling, you shouldn't be walking in. As we all know, there's like this white colonialist sort of,
Yes.
from Nanook of the North onward, right? Of documentary sort of white gaze filmmaking and all of that stuff. The person I partnered with had very much, she lived there and was a journalist there and was fluent and had, spent much of her childhood growing up there. And then we put together an international crew, including a lot of Indonesian folks who then opted for the anonymous credit, except
Anonymous.
for one.
Yeah.
But it was a long-term film where we had to fly into different airports with gear
Yeah.
and then meet up. We couldn't all come in en masse. And
Interesting.
we eventually got I eventually got the access to the head of this oil. This is the richest man in Indonesia. The head of this oil company sat down for an interview, and was on a private tennis court, and this whole thing filmed him playing tennis. And um, I don't think I would have gotten that had I been a man.
Mm,
I think that there was, I think it absolutely helped that we were female filmmakers. But B, even coming in sometimes because we were coming in with, you know, cameras and sound equipment and stuff in these staggered days at these staggered airports, and then we would meet up. We were definitely much more under the wire because we
yeah.
were female, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, definitely. I mean, there are lots of examples of that, but that was an example where that was a really tough, very dangerous film. We were followed. Um, the last one of the last shoots that we had was when we had this interview with this politician, and I hired a private security guy, somebody who worked for the British Armed Forces, who
Yeah.
like now runs a separate company. I raised money for it and had him come. And at one point, he was like, "We need to get in the go, Cynthia, get in the car now, get in the car now, get
Yeah.
in the car. We're getting in the car now." So it was not, you do that kind of stuff in documentary filmmaking. You sort of pick and choose when you take those risks, but that was actually helpful that I think we were females because we were
Hmm.
very much under like what would these girls be doing?
Yeah. I had a
Yeah.
similar my mine was just out of ignorance. I was my first documentary that I made that was international was in China, in Lijiang. And we were just it was just me and another lady, Joe Kent. She is a anchor now for MSNBC. But at that point, we're just two girls from undergrad with a camera walking around. And I think we were filming something. It was just like we thought it was a school, just a school. There were some kids doing military like
Mhm.
exercises. And think about it, we're just filming it. And yeah, definitely security came about like, what are you filming? Like, why are you filming? Basically, like, are you guys spies? And we're like, we don't know anything. But yeah, we were just two girls and they just let us
Yeah.
go, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. If, in that situation, if we were not, I don't think
Hmm.
I think we would have
Yeah.
at least gotten it escalated a lot more. But we're like, we just are students and look at us. We don't know even how to use a camera, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
So, I was going to ask, uh, from when you started to have success, because obviously you won the Academy Award in 2008 for Freeheld.
Hmm.
Did you see your life changed significantly, or is it still a struggle? I always find this interesting, because I on my trip in China, I met another documentary for feature winner, Rocco Bellic, who won for his feature what about throat singing, and he's on his way right now to make his
Oh, I know
first.
who he is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's making his first narrative feature right now, and it feels like the struggle is still the same. And I'm
Yes.
like, it's funny because then it's like all so many filmmakers, their aspiration is, oh, get an Oscar, get an Oscar. My whole life is going
Hmm.
to change, and all
Yeah.
my dreams and all my problems are going to go away. Like, could you shine a light on that aspect?
Yeah. What I would say is everything changes and nothing changes. It's both. Um, it definitely opened up doors for me. Um, it was helpful. I went back 5 years later, got nominated again. So that was helpful in a way because then it was like, it was helpful for me to be like, see, that wasn't a fluke.
Right.
That was helpful too, because there's always, then there's this discount. Well, that was, you got lucky. Again, that word lucky, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was just a fluke. So that was helpful. And then just continuing. So in some ways it was easier. It has been easier to get some grants. I think that sometimes, if people aren't sure if they want to take a risk on you, it's a stamp of approval. Um,
Yes.
but every film is a struggle, and every film you start at the bottom, and it's literally like hiking the hardest mountain range ever, where you finish a film and people are like, "Oh, you must." Well, there's a lot I would love to say about finishing films, but you're standing there with a backpack, and you're like, oh my
That's
God,
it.
there's the next hill. There's the next, not even hill. Like there's the next mountain.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have to go do that now. And you are so dirty and so sweaty and so tired, and your knees and your feet are killing you, and your shoulders hurt because you've been carrying this backpack, and you feel like an ox and you've been carrying things for so long. And it doesn't matter because you have to
Yeah.
start the next. And
Yeah.
every
Start
one
again.
of the films is uniquely challenging, has its
Yes.
own unique challenges and its own unique needs. And personalities. I mean, the films, in documentary at least, the films tell you what they want to be, but it takes really forever. It feels like forever to figure out. Like, I'm like, what do you want to be? Because it's very hard to tell as you're gathering this material, even if you've
Correct.
got a sense. And in the edit, you have to try lots of things. And every first rough cut is just bad. It's just bad. Like, and when I used to teach, I used to say to students, congratulations, you're on the path. It's a bad rough cut. That's awesome. That is awesome. You're on the path. So everything is always like awkward, bad. I mean, it's like the worst that part of yourself in middle school, awkward, ugly, duckling, bad. And you just know, okay, I won't always be in middle school. I won't always be in sixth grade with these, braces on, feeling, like so
Yeah.
like tripping over
Inadequate.
things. But that's
Yeah.
what your rough cut's like, your first, second rough cut. So it's always a struggle and it's always a mountain. But what I have really found is that and this is going to sound like the most ridiculous kind of Instagram, whatever, but I actually believe it's true. I've really come to realize for myself, this is true, is the journey itself is so like the puzzle pieces of trying to figure out how do you get the funding? How do you get the access? How do you maintain the truth? How do you've got 40 shoot days, but you need to make this 70 shoot days, like whatever it is, the puzzle of it is so, for me, satisfying that the journey is the destination for me. It
Yes.
really
Yes.
is. I just want to be engaged in that. And I do feel like there's something that I hook into that's like from like, this is going to sound so woo, but like from the universe where I feel like I'm a vessel. Like it's just coming in and I'm a vessel. And I know writers have this feeling too, where my job is to just put one foot in front of the other and keep going, even if I don't
Mm-hmm.
know where I'm going. That's
Yes.
my job, right? Because eventually we will again create something out of nothing. I think the worst part is actually when you've achieved it. When you
Oh my
actually,
gosh, I would totally agree with you on this.
when you're done, there
Yes.
is such, and people say, women filmmakers will say it's like giving birth. I don't think it's like
There's a
giving birth.
grieving
You know
period.
what it is? It is a death.
Yeah.
It's a death. It is a death, and people don't understand this because your whole reason for being, like if I leave nothing on the
Your
table, like when I
purpose.
finish a film,
Yeah.
all the DNA in my body, like everything, it feels like I've ripped myself open. Some giant hand has come in and taken part of my liver and part of my spleen and maybe squeezed my heart a little bit and ripped some of my lung out, put it out there into the film, and
Yeah.
then maybe hastily sewed me up. And I am, by the end of a film, I am staggering around like the ghost captain of a ghost ship, where I'm just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, and I've been in it, right? And it might have been my Indonesian film took 5 years. I've had films take much longer, or it might be a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, right? So, but at the end, you're walking around empty and I literally feel like I'm missing body parts. Like
Yeah.
it's a physical feeling, and it is a death. I don't care what anybody says. If you don't feel that it's a death, I would argue you're not an
You didn't
artist
put it enough.
because you
Yeah.
didn't put in enough. Because
Yes.
you should feel so empty. You should feel like there's almost no reason to live. Like
Yes.
almost no. And I'm not. That sounds hyperbolic, but it feels that way. Like
I
you
agree.
you have left nothing on the table, and so people are like, you must be so glad that you're done. Or I saw you at the Oscars. You must have been flying high. I'm like, I feel like I'm shattered. It feels like broken glass inside.
Yeah.
No. And then to take that and figure out, how do I actually grow these organs back? How do I stitch myself up? Because that part of me is never
Yes.
coming back. It's out in the film.
Yes.
And the public is going to do what the public's going to do. And the internet,
It's gonna do
snarky
whatever it wants
internet,
to
and the
do.
bros in their armchairs
Yeah.
who could never do this are going to do whatever they're going to bro do, right? Whatever. I just know that the thing that has been the most compelling and satisfying and just emotionally engaging for me, and the reason I feel like I am happy to be alive and because I'm here, is the process. It
Yeah.
is not the destination. And so, yeah, it's 100% a death. there's such a grieving period at the end of a film. It
Yes.
is like it's the end of a relationship. It's
Relationship.
the end of a
Yes.
marriage.
Yes.
You've been married to that thing. And
Yes.
that thing that you've been married to has just died. It hasn't been born, it's died because
Yeah.
it's no longer in you, it's out
Yes.
there.
It's out.
And the world owns it in a way. And in the world owning it, it actually gets transformed. It actually like it feels like it becomes a different sort of
Yeah,
physical
it takes
thing
its own
because
life.
right, it has its own life. And you are empty. You
Yep.
are empty and it feels like a death. And
Yeah.
I often think, I think to myself, is this a film where they're like literally pop-up tents of grief, like in a place like LA, where when you are empty, when you are like you stagger in like you're like the ghost in a video game, like a pirate ghost, right? You're like, like you see part of your face and there's like, ragged clothing and there's like,
You're a
you see
zombie.
the yeah, exactly. You're a zombie and you see the ribs and stuff. And you like go into this tent, this grieving tent,
With other
and you
people that
sit
look
there
like
with
you.
other people that look like you and you feel what it feels like. And it's so, I find those in between places between the engagement of things,
Yeah.
and you can't just automatically. And the other thing that I find very hard is when people say, what are you working on next?
Oh, I hate
I'm like,
that all the
I'm
time.
like, I just buried, I mean, essentially, right?
Yeah.
No
Buried my
disrespect
kid.
to my husband. Like,
Yeah.
I just buried my spouse, and you're
Yeah.
essentially saying, who are you going to date next? Like, are you kidding me? Like, and
Wow.
people don't know. So this kind of staggering around ghost ship feeling, death feeling is real. And I would argue that if you don't feel this, you're not putting it all, you've left something on the table, and, or you're not really an artist. And I think that's probably true for people that paint, the people that write music, the people that write novels,
Yeah.
whatever your art form is.
I'm so glad you
Yeah.
said this because I felt this after my feature and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like I felt so depressed and
Yes.
sad and like
Yes.
people were like, oh, it's a burnout. You just burned out. You burned out. It was not just that. It was like, I don't know. You're exactly right. Everything's out there. And then like while you're coping with the fact that this part of you is out there, you're also kind of looking at from afar as people attack that like very vulnerable part about you that's out there that you have no control about that you have to just like pretend is not happening as well.
Yes.
And I what's interesting is you probably feel this even more because you are it's a lot of your projects you're work for. I haven't been no, that's not true. I have, but as much work for hire directing
Mm-hmm.
where you literally have you're telling me you have a new project that you have zero control now with the outcome of what is it's going to be. It's different when you are also the producer and everything, so
Mm-hmm.
you get to still have a direct impact on future what happens with the film or whatever. But I mean, how it is amplified being a for hire director, and how have you dealt with it, because there are
Just
not
depends on
many.
it really depends. Like
Yeah.
I was for hire. I mean, there's so little I can say until tomorrow morning,
Yes.
and then I can say
Yes.
everything. But this Mer People series, certainly the thing I can say is I did direct it. It
Mm-hmm.
is about real life mermaids and mermen and merfolk,
Yes.
mers or merms, which is a non-binary term
Yes.
for underwater performers. Tomorrow they'll at 8 a.m. Pacific, there'll be a trailer that will be out there, and by 9 a.m. it'll be worldwide, and then that's awesome. I can't say much more than that, but that has been out there on the internet that I directed that, so I can
Yeah.
say that much. I mean, that was an amazing experience, and I feel like very much that has my DNA. I mean, it was work for hire, but I 100% feel like it is a signature piece for me, and it very much reflects my sensibility, both in terms of very intimate documentary storytelling, but also I have a quirky sense of humor, and there's really sweet quirkiness that is um, it's very much told from the inside. So it's not like a critical eye from the outside. It's like it's very much
Totally.
told from the inside. And that feels like a signature piece, and that's a gift when that can happen. It can't always happen, but sometimes work for hire can feel like your own DNA. If you have good executives, sometimes it can feel like you're like it's your own body, it's your own body part. I think regardless, though, The grieving, I wish there was a way for us, like, I think culturally, we don't want to talk about death. It's often why death is a theme in my documentaries.
Sure.
And sometimes it's not death of a person, it's a death of a ideology, a relationship, etc. But I wish that we could talk more about the utter, you feel rudderless, you feel adrift, you have to be.
Yeah, because your
You
purpose is
feel
gone.
soulless, your purpose is gone. And it does feel like that thing that I'm talking about being connected to the universe, it feels like it something de-docks. It like
Yeah,
something deconnects and it goes and you
into the
know it'll
ether.
come back. Goes back to the ether, but you are no longer connected as a vessel in the way that you were that gave you purpose.
Right.
And I remember being in my 20s and listening, and it was really before I was making films full time, but I knew I had it in me, and I was working in homeless shelters. Katie Lang has this song, "Why Else," Hollow Soul, and it's "Why else endure the season of fate must have a reason. Why else endure the season of hollow soul?" And it's so beautifully said because I think those in between moments of your filmmaking career, it's a season of hollow soul. And you
Yeah.
just have to kind of live it and breathe it every day. And it's hard. People are like, you must be getting rest. And you're like,
Mm. Yeah.
eh, I'm grieving, but
Yeah.
okay, thanks. So yeah. And it's, like falling in love. You can't, you can line up the next project. You have to line up the next project because of money, whatever. But you won't know when it hits you again, when that spirit hits you again, and when you fall in love again, because you can't MacGyver falling in love. You know what
Right.
I mean? And you are loving your projects. You are
Yeah.
loving them.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I don't that part I've felt and I was like, did I push myself to like it is you feel like a ghost of yourself.
Yes.
And I agree. I remember like doing the promos and stuff and just feeling I should be happy. I should be like
Yes.
celebrating and everybody else
Yep.
around me is
Yep.
celebrating and stuff and I'm wearing whatever and finally look like a human being, but I don't feel that
That's right.
way.
That's
Yeah.
right. And you
Yeah.
know what? That means you've done it right. That's
Yeah.
all I can say. And I wish that could be like, I wish that could be the mantra and the sort of guiding force for anybody who's creative is that if you feel like crap, and I don't mean just tired, I mean, like, if you feel purposeless and adrift and broken and grieving, it's grief. That's all I can say. It's not sadness. It's like grief. It's
Yeah.
different.
It's grief. Yeah.
It means after the end of your film, or when you're done or whatever you're engaged in, means you did it right.
Yeah.
Means you
Yeah.
means you used all the DNA in your body to do whatever you could possibly do to breathe this into life and sustain this. And literally coming back to the beginning, creating something out of nothing and breathing something out of nothing into, like, that itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost. I think it comes at an enormous cost to the artist. And we live for those messy, I live at least for those messy middle parts.
Yeah.
The end sucks.
The end sucks.
And
I
I'd say
agree.
the beginning kind of sucks too, because you're like, oh
Yeah.
God, here we go. But
Yeah.
the middle, as hard as the middle is, and the middle can go on for years, is the
Magical.
best. It's the best.
Yeah. It's
It's
what we
so
live for.
messy. It's so
Yeah.
messy, but it's the best. Yeah, because you have a
Yeah.
relationship with this thing.
Yeah. So as a bringing it to a landing
Yes.
during these ends because the ends are hard, what do you do or what are suggestions to people who are in that at that end
Mm-hmm.
for I guess they call self-care
Mm-hmm.
or getting yourself back into to that mindset to create again?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first of all, you just have to, like, really recognize that it's grief. Like, until you recognize when you finish something and you feel like you've given it all, and you're like, what is exactly what you said? Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
This was
I was
great.
supposed to
What's
feel
wrong with
happy.
me?
Yeah,
I'm
I
supposed to feel
accomplished
happy.
something.
What's wrong
Yeah.
with me?
Yeah.
Like, um, recognizing that that's like, if you've used your entire body and soul and psyche and everything to create something and then it disengages, you are going to feel not even depleted, but as I said, it is going to be this grieving process. But even to know that and to put words into it, put words to it, I think helps.
Awareness. Yeah.
Awareness. Yeah. I mean, for me, it always is true is lots of physical exercise. Physical exercise always helps everything, even if it
Yes.
means taking a walk. And if you still don't feel good after taking a walk, take another walk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like at a certain point, walking is really, I think, the best medicine. You can work out, you can do intense stuff, I hike and do other things as well. But at the very least, I think walking helps. It
Yeah.
really helps. You can, you get into a better place. And then just recognizing, like, I think a lot of time you're like going out or being with people, it can be very draining, that you
Mm-hmm.
just need time, just, time inside, time to think, maybe time to read, time to listen to a podcast, time to listen to lots of music,
Yeah.
but physical movement. And then just time, like, just being recognized that, like, wow, like whatever that force was just went away, it just disconnected. And I'm alone in this kind of mortal body, and I just have to kind of wait it out. And then at some other point, something will hit.
Yeah.
I can start to incubate some stuff, but I don't know.
Spark
I mean,
will
I
come
guess, and
again.
the other flip side of it is what a gift. What a
Yeah.
gift to be able to give everything
Yeah.
you have to something that you love.
Yep. A gift and a privilege, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Cynthia, I could go on and on. I'm like, man, we need to do a whole series. Like, how does it feel like when you're, being a woman and going through, how is it? I would
Yeah.
love to talk more about it. I do think that, the part that I got the most was you talking about the end, because I've been
Yeah.
thinking about that over a while.
Why, I don't know why people aren't talking about it more or
Yeah.
recognizing it more. Like it's just, and it just, and grief is the kind of thing where, to a certain extent you have to do it alone, and
Yeah.
it will, and it has its own timeline, and it has its
Yes.
own waves of things. And, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think we just don't talk about it more because by that time the rest of the world gets to celebrate, and nobody wants to have a
or,
dead. Yeah.
right. Celebrate or, didn't really nail it. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So the
Okay,
rest of the world
bro.
is just there to.
Okay,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah,
Thank
enjoy
you.
your armchair. Thank you. Yeah,
But not. Yeah. Oh man. Yes.
yeah.
I
So,
don't.
but I do want to say that
Yes.
Mer People will be out. It's 4-part series. We shot all over the country. Very excited. The trailer drops tomorrow morning,
Yes, I'm
and that's
excited
all I
about
can
that.
say. I just want, if anybody's on that, like, that's all I'm saying, because that's on the internet. I've not said anything that hasn't been already announced. So the trailer drops tomorrow, and then it is dropping on the 23rd of May. It's
Very
premiering on the
excited
23rd of
about it.
May. So 4 parts all at
Yeah.
once,
All at
worldwide.
once. Excellent. Good.
Yay! And then my film that I co-directed with Sharon Leese, The
Yes,
Flagmakers.
we didn't even get to talk about that. I had so many questions about that when we went on about
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's on Disney Plus.
Yes. The flag
And Nat
makers, so
Geo, The
good.
Flagmakers.
Yes.
A look at it's a poem,
I
really,
loved
which I
it.
think
Yeah.
confusing people, because I think, it's a pretty standard title, and then it's kind of,
No,
when
it
reviews,
takes us a life
oddly
in its
poetic.
own.
And I was like, okay, it is oddly poetic, but
Yeah.
it's a meditation on the
The
so-called
American
American
dream.
dream
Yes.
through the immigrants and refugees and
Yes.
Midwestern born and bred flag makers at this Milwaukee area American Flag Factory, the largest in the country.
I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I also went in without any expectations. I had no clue what it was about, and then to have this different perspective of, wow, what does the meaning of the flag have, and then just all these different immigrants with different backgrounds making the flag, and then you still had a different perspective of somebody who felt like America hasn't been there for them. It was, I don't know, it was absolutely fascinating. I was actually in a, one of the questions I had on my list that I clearly didn't ask was like, how did you find that story?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, the short answer is my co-director, Sharon Leese, was following a sewing program for refugees in Kansas City, where she's based. And one of them got placed at a flag factory. And we were like, this Muslim woman that got, a refugee who then is in the middle of the country in Kansas who goes to a flag factory. And I was like, wait, that's interesting. And that flag factory was like, no way.
Yeah.
So we went on a nationwide search and ended up getting access to a flag factory in Wisconsin. Yeah. So that's on Disney Plus. And I've done one fiction film on my own that's short, featurette.
Oh, okay.
26 minutes. I'll send it to you. In
Please
fact,
send it
I
to
will
me.
make it anybody who wants to see it, I will send you a link. Because I'm trying to decide I could put it at one of those. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. And maybe I'll just have it start to stream on Vimeo for free once the Mer People thing is out. But it's a fiction film that I conceived of and directed that's also about loss and about death, but in a very quirky way, based on a true story.
Oh yeah, I
happy to send it to you. So it's called Sproutland.
Yes, please.
So there's stuff out there, and then who knows what's next? Really, I mean, I know what the short term is. I don't know what the long term is, but I guess none of us do.
I was gonna pitch some offline. Your doc, The Flag Makers, actually now has sparked something that was I told you about the short that was Syrian refugee. Yeah, I'll be yes, that one. When I made that, a lot of people were pushing me to make it into a feature, and now suddenly I'm like, wait, I have an idea. So I'll pitch that to you after.
Yay!
Offline. Yeah. Good. So, but no, I feel like there more filmmaker to filmmaker should have more conversations, because there's to share war stories and just I don't know. It makes us feel like, because you are right, in this industry, especially you're a director, you feel very alone a lot of times. There's like a periods of like, I'm with everybody, I'm surrounded by everybody, all that stuff, and then there's this period when everything's gone, the project is dissolved and it's gone, and you're grieving when you're alone again. That part can be hard.
Very hard. Very hard. Yeah.
So I do my little push, but yes, that's been a Get Reelisms podcast. So this is I'll send you one, but this is I made this because I've had to teach lots of PAs on set about how to do set work for fictional stuff. So it's like a adult picture book. But if you don't know anything out there, Get Reelisms, we started this channel because we wanted to hear stories from other filmmakers, talk about the ins and outs of filmmaking that a lot of people don't get to hear about, the hard parts, not the glorious red carpet stuff, but the hard truth. So that anybody out there who does want to make a film can make sure that they actually want to do it or they celebrate your wins and your losses and everything. So.
Can we say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Can we just go back to those 1-star bots?
Oh my IMDb? God, yes.
Just one last thing as a final thing is, and I try to do this as well. Like I just went to see a screening last night that like clearly they had really cobbled together. It was really hard won money that they cobbled together. And it was a unique perspective, and there was a female cinematographer, and it was very much like, anyway, I try to seek those films out and to see them. I always learn something. But if you are moved by a film, it really does make a difference to like vote on IMDb, because those bots or dudes or whatever, like that, it's a real thing. Like you and I both belong to Film Fatales, which is for female filmmakers. And we've had whole, events talking about how do you combat, like you release a film, you've got a female identifying first name, and they'll immediately just start bombing you with 1 stars. It's crazy. I mean, you think about it like, wow, are you really that threatened? Like this is a threat. So anyway, if you do love something, vote on it and support on it, because at least that helps counteract that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you've mentioned that. So don't always believe the reviews that you see on IMDb and elsewhere. There are quite a lot of bots out there.
Yes.
And we don't know why, but it happens. And so, especially at this, at the beginning stages when so many people count on reviews as their end all be all, it is important that we all support each other and try to help counter that for sure. Yeah. Anything. list out. You've got what are the ones that you're needing? We have the flag makers, and then
well, it wasn't about me. I wasn't. It was not about me.
no. But like,
no, it wasn't about me. It was just generally all of
generally
us. Like,
go on IMDb.
Yeah.
If you find any,
it just helps. It does really help. And it's just agree. Like, and it's all of these people who've never made a film.
Who's never or watched your film. That's the biggest shocker.
Well, that's true. That's
watched your film.
Yeah.
That's the most annoying part. Most of them haven't even watched your film. Yeah. I'm like, really? I remember when I saw that. I'm like, we have not released the freaking film yet. How are you kidding me? Yeah. And it makes a difference because people, the outside world they don't understand. They don't know that that's a thing. So yes. Yes. And watch independent films.